The new Mercedes GLC is marked out by enhanced electrification. The headline models are the two new plug-in hybrids. There's a petrol and a diesel as before, but their drive batteries are bigger for a longer electric range. But diesel is still popular in the premium SUV market. And why is that? Well, drivers of these cars cover big distances and they often tow as well. That all means a diesel GLC is as relevant as ever. Mercedes has updated the powertrain. It gets a 48-volt mild hybrid system, and that means more performance and a little boost in economy too. Whatever you think of the exterior, the interior of the new GLC is actually very, very special. It's probably the most new thing about the car. It follows on from the C-Class design, which in turn was inspired by the S-Class, and that's a really high bar indeed. In a way, it's dominated by the air vents, and that's probably a Mercedes design characteristics for its interior. You've got the three in the middle here, one on either end, and they're very, very tactile to use as well. And at night, they light up. The first thing owners of the previous GLC will notice when they get in is this lovely new touchscreen in the middle. It's sloped back and it is beautifully integrated into this central console here. It looks like it's all one piece, in fact. The best thing is that it works as well as it looks. It's very similar to that in the S-Class and in the C-Class as well. The menu is very easy to use, it's simple to find your way around, and what I really like is that it can all be operated from the steering wheel. Mercedes introduced this new generation steering wheel a couple of years ago, and I must admit that when it first did, I didn't really like it. It has very, very sensitive touch controls here. On the left hand side, it controls the center screen. On the right, it's the instruments in front of you. They are very sensitive, but when you get used to them, it is really very impressive. You can quickly go through all the different menus, and it's simple to use. It's intuitive. In front of the driver, you have digital instrumentation as well, and the view can be changed through a few different designs. Aside from the really brilliant infotainment and the sense of high quality, there's a decent amount of storage in here. This is still a practical SUV after all. In the center console here, underneath this big closing flap, you have two large cup holders, and they're variable in size as well, which is really useful. This is also where the wireless charger goes and USB ports. Behind that is a typical Mercedes butterfly opening armrest. There's more storage in there and even under the USB port. The door pockets are noticeably large. They're wide and deep, which is really, really useful as well. And from the driver's perspective, there's a lot of adjustment in the driving position. This steering column electrically adjusts up and down, in and out, and it gives you a really clear view of the instruments, and indeed you can put the steering wheel where you best like it. The seats themselves come with a wide range of adjustment. You do it on the door here, and it's every which way. Any driver will get comfortable in this car. And also, I will say it's hard to believe that this upholstery isn't leather. It's actually a synthetic material, but it feels of really good quality. In the back, it feels like a quality SUV too. As with every other car in this class, there is space for three across the back here, but it's designed for two, as there's a large transmission tunnel. Those in the two outer seats get a lot of headroom, plenty of legroom and knee room here, so it is a comfortable place to spend time. There are two more of these lovely tactile air vents here. You get some pockets in the back of the seats, also some door pockets, and in this armrest are two big cup holders. Sadly, I can't find any charging ports back here, which is a bit of a shame. Speaking of practicalities, the GLC comes with a big boot. It's over 600 litres of space back here, and that's one of the big advantages of the diesel model over the plug-in hybrids. The rear seat back split fold 60/40 as you'd hope, and it makes a lovely flat surface. Usefully, there's additional space under the boot floor for hidden storage. If I was asked to use one word to describe how the GLC drives, it would be smoothly. It pretty much defines everything it does. Its controls are smooth, they respond as you'd expect, they're well weighted. The suspension is smooth despite the fact that we're on a set of very stylish alloy wheels, quite large alloy wheels on low profile tyres. And despite all that, it still rides the bumps quite well. We're up in the mountains here and it's fun to drive, it's good to drive actually. And yet, for the average person, the average driver who doesn't love driving, isn't enthusiastic about driving, they will still get out of the GLC and say they like driving it. It is good to drive, it is smooth at everything it does, it's very competent. When ambling around, the diesel engine under the bonnet is also quiet and smooth, and you can't even hear it. You can't hear it on the motorway, only when you're accelerating can you hear it, and even then it's quite, again that word, smooth. It returns decent economy, and of course it shows when you've got a full tank, you've got over 1,000 kilometers of range, and that's one of the big benefits of going for the diesel version over some of the others. Obviously comparison to plug-in hybrids, you never have to plug this car in, so it very much suits those that are on the road all the time. The GLC 220D is the entry-level model actually, and it has on paper peak power of 194 horsepower. It doesn't sound like a lot, especially in a fairly big car such as this, but it never feels wanting, and that's probably because of a diesel engine is torquier. It's got all that low down torque, and so it's quite an effortless performance. You don't need to put your foot down, you don't need to rev the engine out to make decent progress. Also, the mild hybrid system I mentioned earlier has a subtle but noticeable effect on performance. So at low speeds it gives a little extra boost to the engine, where perhaps the turbocharger is off boost, the electric system cuts in and gives it a little extra acceleration. It's very, very subtle, but it's effective, and the end result is that this car feels perfectly capable. It feels perfectly fast enough and powerful enough for most people's needs. If you are in a hurry, the GLC responds well. It clearly has been developed by German test drivers, by a German company that, you know, in Germany they drive a bit quicker, they have the Nürburgring for testing, they drive on the Autobahn a lot, and the cars are designed to be driven at higher speeds, and certainly higher speeds than most countries. And while we don't advocate driving at such higher speeds, what that means is it is safe at normal speeds and it is competent, and so the average person, the average owner, is never going to push this car to its absolute limits, and it means it just makes for a safe drive at all times. As ever in a modern car, there are various driving modes to choose from on the screen here. You can choose from E for efficiency, presumably, C for comfort, which is the default, S for sport, and then I for individual, where you can choose different bits and pieces from those various modes. In the sport mode, interestingly, there's also an augmented engine sound piped in, which is a bit unusual in a diesel, and it just about works. It doesn't sound like, for some manufacturers have tried to make their diesel sound like petrol V8s and things like that, but this doesn't do that. It just sounds a bit sportier. And it probably works as well, because you have firmer steering, the car just feels a bit tauter and a bit more responsive. There is a GLC Coupe as well, and there's a new version of that to go along with this SUV that we're driving. In terms of practicalities, such as visibility, I'm finding that you can see out in all directions very well. There's a nice big rear window. The over-the-shoulder view is also good, so it should be quite safe when it comes to parking and manoeuvring. It is fitted with an actual army of sensors and cameras too, so it is quite safe in that environment. Going through the twistier turns here, I really like the steering calibration. It's just free of friction in any way. It's smooth, again, that word, and it's notably direct without being hypersensitive in any way. So on the motorway it feels very, very stable, but up here in the mountains it's also really enjoyable to drive. I am very impressed that Mercedes has managed to keep its customary brake feel on this car, even with a new mild hybrid system built into the engine. It means the pedal is very easy to modulate. It gives you loads of confidence when driving it, and the car feels like it has plenty of brakes, despite the fact that it is, you know, relatively big SUV. Should have mentioned that all versions of the GLC, hybrid or not, they all use a 9-speed automatic gearbox, and they all have 4MATIC 4-wheel drive. The gearbox is very smooth. It works unobtrusively. When you're in a sport mode, it does hold the gears for longer, that then lets the engine rev a bit more, and the shifts are perhaps more urgent as well. So a little less smooth in the sport mode, but that's perhaps as you'd expect, and also maybe what you'd want if you're choosing that driving mode. But for the vast majority of the time, it is just smooth. That sums up the GLC's driving experience, really, as I said from the start. The diesel GLC comes with some obvious benefits. It is practical. It is the most practical version in the range, in fact. You never ever have to plug it in, and it is the best for towing. Nonetheless, whichever the GLCs you go for, there's no doubt that it is a handsome, in a subtle kind of way car. It is practical, it is comfortable, and the interior is absolutely fantastic. It all adds up to being one of the best premium SUVs in the market. That's our review of the Mercedes GLC. I hope you liked it. If you want to read about the GLC and indeed all of its rivals, pop along to our website. It's CompleteCar.ie, and it's a great resource for finding your next new car.